Most people assume survival requires expensive gear, high-end tools, tactical equipment, specialized kits, things that look powerful. But real situations don't care about how impressive something looks. They care about whether it works. And often, the items that make the biggest difference are the ones people ignore completely. Cheap, simple, easy to find. That's why dollar store items are so powerful. Not because they're perfect, but because they solve basic problems quickly and consistently. Now here's the pattern. In unstable conditions, problems are repetitive. You deal with the same issues again and again. Light disappears. Water access becomes uncertain. Small injuries happen. Hygiene becomes harder to maintain. And these problems don't require advanced solutions. They require reliable ones. Now here's the key shift. Expensive gear is often designed for specific scenarios, but cheap items are usually flexible. They can be used in multiple ways. Adapted, combined, reused, and that flexibility increases their value. Now here's another advantage. Availability. You can get these items early, before demand spikes, before shelves empty, before people realize they need them. And because they're low cost, you can store more without hesitation. Now here's the deeper insight. Cheap items reduce hesitation. You don't think twice before using them. You don't worry about wasting them. You just use them when needed. And that speed of action matters under pressure. Now here's what most people miss. Preparation is not about owning impressive things. It's about solving small problems consistently. Because small problems are what build into bigger ones. And if you can manage them early, you avoid larger issues later. Now understand this. A simple item that works every time is more valuable than an advanced item you rarely use. Because reliability under pressure is everything. Now here's the takeaway. You don't need a big budget to be prepared. You need awareness, the ability to recognize which simple items can make a real difference. And once you see it, you realize that some of the most valuable tools cost almost nothing. Item 1, candles. They seem basic, old-fashioned, simple, easy to ignore. But in a situation where power is gone, candles become one of the most reliable light sources you can have. Now here's why they matter. They don't depend on batteries. They don't require charging. They don't rely on any system. You light them and they work every time. Now compare that to modern lighting. Flashlights depend on batteries. Phones drain quickly. Rechargeable lights need power sources. Once those systems are limited, your lighting becomes temporary. But candles provide continuous light as long as you have them. Now here's the key detail. Light is not just about seeing. It's about function. Without light, everything slows down, movement becomes cautious, tasks take longer, decision-making becomes harder, even simple actions feel more difficult. Now here's where candles become powerful. They extend your usable time. They allow you to function after dark, and that changes everything. Now here's another layer. Heat. Even a small flame produces warmth. Not enough to heat a room, but enough to make a difference in cold conditions. Now here's why people underestimate candles. Because they feel outdated. Compared to modern lighting, they seem less advanced. But under unstable conditions, simplicity becomes reliability. Now here's the deeper insight. Candles are predictable. They don't fail suddenly. You can see how much you have left. You can plan around them. And that predictability reduces uncertainty. Now here's where value shows up. A single candle can provide hours of light, and multiple candles can be distributed across spaces. Use strategically, not all at once. Now here's the key takeaway. Cheap doesn't mean weak. It often means simple, and simplicity performs better when systems fail. Now imagine having no light at all, and then having even one candle. That difference is immediate, and in uncertain conditions, immediate solutions are what matter most. Item 2, duct tape. It doesn't look like a survival item. It looks like something you keep in a drawer and forget about. But duct tape is one of the most versatile tools you can have when things go wrong. Because it doesn't solve one problem. It solves many. Now here's why it matters. When systems are unstable, small failures happen everywhere. Things break, tear, leak, loosen, And those small problems can turn into bigger ones if they're not handled quickly. That's where duct tape becomes critical. Now here's what it can do. Seal a leak temporarily. Repair torn materials. Reinforce weak points. Secure loose items. Even provide basic first aid support in emergencies. Not perfectly, but effectively enough to stabilize the situation. Now here's the key detail. In uncertain conditions, perfect solutions are rare. Temporary solutions are what keep things functional, and duct tape specializes in temporary stability. Now here's the deeper insight. It buys you time. Time to think. Time to adjust. Time to find a better solution later. And time is one of the most valuable resources under pressure. Now here's why people underestimate it. Because it's cheap. It feels like a basic household item, not something important. But that's exactly why it's powerful. It's accessible, easy to use, and works without any setup. Now consider this. If something breaks and you have no way to fix it, it becomes a problem. But if you can stabilize it quickly, it remains manageable. That difference is what duct tape provides. Now here's the pattern. Versatile tools outperform specialized ones in uncertain conditions because you don't know what problem will appear next. And duct tape adapts. Now here's where value shows up. One roll can solve dozens of small issues, and solving small issues early prevents larger ones from forming. Now here's the takeaway. You don't need perfect tools. You need tools that keep things working. And duct tape does exactly that. Quietly, reliably, without attention. Item 3, plastic sheeting or large trash bags. It looks like nothing special. Just thin plastic, lightweight, easy to overlook. But in unstable conditions, plastic becomes one of the most flexible survival tools you can have because it solves one of the most common problems, exposure. Now here's what that means. Protection from rain, protection from wind, basic insulation, barrier against contamination, and plastic can do all of that. Now here's why it matters. When your environment becomes unpredictable, you need quick ways to control it. Not perfectly, but enough to stay functional. Now here's what plastic sheeting or heavy-duty trash bags can do. Create temporary shelter, cover broken windows, keep supplies dry, act as ground insulation, even collect water in certain situations. One simple item, multiple uses. Now here's the key detail. It's not about strength. It's about adaptability. Plastic bends, folds, wraps, and seals. That makes it useful in situations you can't fully predict. Now here's the deeper insight. Exposure is one of the fastest ways conditions get worse. Cold, moisture, and wind drain energy quickly. And once your body starts losing heat or staying wet, everything becomes harder. Now plastic helps interrupt that process. It creates a barrier, and that barrier buys time. Now here's why people underestimate it. Because it's cheap and common. It doesn't look like survival gear, but that's exactly why it works. No learning curve, no setup complexity, just immediate use. Now here's another layer. Storage. Plastic takes almost no space. You can keep multiple pieces without noticing. And when needed, it becomes one of the most useful items you have. Now here's the pattern. Lightweight, flexible items often provide the most value because they adapt to multiple situations. Now here's the takeaway. You don't need perfect shelter. You need enough protection to stay stable. And something as simple as plastic can be the difference between control conditions and constant discomfort. Item 4, lighters, multiple, not just one. A single lighter feels like enough until it isn't, because fire is one of the most important tools in any unstable situation and also one of the easiest to lose access to. Now here's why lighters matter. They provide instant ignition. No setup, no skill requirement, no delay. You use them and they work. But the key is not having one. It's having multiple. Now here's the problem with relying on a single lighter. It can fail. It can run out. It can get lost at the worst moment. And once it's gone, starting a fire becomes much harder. Now here's what fire actually gives you. Heat, light, ability to cook food, ability to boil water, even psychological comfort in uncertain conditions. So a lighter is not just a small tool. It's access to multiple survival functions. Now here's the deeper insight. Redundancy matters more than perfection. One reliable item is good. Multiple simple backups are better. Because failure is not a question of if. It's a question of when. Now here's why people underestimate this. Because lighters are cheap and common, so they don't treat them as critical items. But that's exactly why they should. You can afford to have several. Store them in different places. And ensure that losing one doesn't remove your ability to make fire. Now here's another key detail. Speed. Under pressure, you don't want complicated methods. You want immediate results. And lighters give you that. Now compare that to alternative methods. They may work, but they take more time, more effort, and more precision. And under stress, that becomes a problem. Now here's the pattern. Critical functions should always have backups. And fire is one of the most critical functions there is. Now here's the takeaway. Don't think in terms of one item per need. Think in terms of continuous access. Because once you lose access, the problem becomes much bigger than expected. And something as small and cheap as a lighter can prevent that entirely. Item 5. Basic hygiene supplies. Soap, wipes, sanitizer. Hygiene is one of the first things people underestimate. Not because it seems unimportant, but because it doesn't feel urgent at the beginning. You can delay cleaning. You can tolerate discomfort for a while, so it gets pushed aside. But that delay creates problems faster than most expect. Now here's why hygiene matters. It prevents small issues from turning into bigger ones. Skin irritation, infections, contamination from dirty hands or surfaces. These start small, but grow quickly when conditions are unstable. Now here's the key detail. In limited resource environments, recovery is slower, so prevention becomes more important than treatment. And hygiene is prevention. Now consider this. If water access becomes limited, maintaining cleanliness becomes harder. That's where simple items like soap, wet wipes, hand sanitizer become extremely valuable because they allow you to maintain basic cleanliness without relying fully on water. Now here's the deeper insight. Hygiene supports health indirectly. It doesn't feel like a critical item until problems start appearing. And once they appear, they are harder to fix. Now here's why people overlook these items. Because they are common, cheap, everyday products. They don't feel like survival tools, but in reality, they are stability tools. Now here's another layer. Comfort. Cleanliness improves mental state, and mental clarity affects decision-making. So hygiene doesn't just protect your body, it helps you stay functional. Now here's the pattern. Items that prevent problems are often more valuable than items that fix them, because prevention saves time, energy, and resources. Now here's where value shows up. A small bar of soap or a pack of wipes can maintain basic health for days, and that consistency matters more than occasional solutions. Now here's the takeaway. You don't need complex systems to stay clean. You need simple, repeatable tools. And cheap hygiene supplies provide exactly that, quietly preventing problems before they have a chance to grow. Item 6. Rope or strong cord. It looks simple, almost too simple to matter. Just a piece of rope, a length of cord. But in uncertain conditions, rope becomes one of the most useful tools you can have because it doesn't solve one problem. It enables solutions. Now here's why it matters. You often need to secure, tie, lift, or organize things quickly. And without something to bind or hold, everything becomes harder. Now here's what rope or cord can do. Secure shelter materials. Tie down loose items. Create makeshift repairs. Hang or store supplies off the ground. Even assist in moving or pulling objects. It turns unstable setups into stable ones. Now here's the key detail. Stability reduces effort. When things are secured properly, you don't have to constantly fix or adjust them. That saves time and energy. Now here's the deeper insight. In unstable conditions, your environment shifts constantly. Wind, movement, limited space, all create small disruptions. And rope helps you control those disruptions. Not perfectly, but enough to maintain order. Now here's why people underestimate it. Because it's not flashy. It doesn't look like a solution by itself. But that's exactly the point. It supports other solutions. Now consider this. Without rope, you may have all the materials you need, but no way to assemble or secure them effectively. With rope, those same materials become usable. Now here's another layer. Flexibility. Rope can be cut, adjusted, reused, and repurposed. It adapts to the situation, and adaptability increases value. Now here's the pattern. Simple tools that enable multiple actions are more valuable than complex tools that solve one task, because you don't know what problem will come next. Now here's where value shows up. A small amount of strong cord can solve dozens of small problems, and solving small problems consistently prevents larger ones from forming. Now here's the takeaway. Rope is not about strength alone. It's about control, the ability to secure your environment instead of reacting to it. And that control becomes critical when everything else feels uncertain. Item 7, manual can opener. It's one of the most ignored items on this list because it feels too ordinary, too basic to even think about. But in a real disruption, it can become one of the most important tools you own. Now here's why. A large portion of stored food comes in cans. It's durable, long-lasting, easy to store. But all of that value depends on one thing: access. And without a can opener, access becomes a problem. Now here's what most people assume. They'll find a way, use a knife, break the lid, improvise. And yes, that's possible. But under pressure, with limited energy, low light, or stress, improvisation becomes harder than expected. It takes more effort, more time, more risk. Now here's the key detail. A manual can opener doesn't rely on power. No electricity, no batteries, no system. You use it and it works every time. Now compare that to electric openers or tools that require energy. They become useless the moment power disappears. Now here's the deeper insight. Preparedness is not just about having resources. It's about being able to use them easily. Because if something is difficult to access, it might as well not exist. Now consider this. You could have days or weeks of food stored. But if opening that food becomes a struggle, you introduce friction into every meal. And that friction builds frustration and slows you down. Now here's another layer. Safety. Improvised methods often lead to sharp edges, spills, injury risk. A simple can opener removes all of that. Now here's why people overlook it. Because it's cheap. It doesn't feel like a survival item. But that's exactly why it's powerful. It's easy to get, easy to store, easy to use, and it solves a real problem immediately. Now here's the bigger picture. Look at all 7 items together. Candles, duct tape, plastic sheeting, lighters, hygiene supplies, rope, manual can opener. None of them are expensive. None of them are complex. But each one solves a repeat problem. And that's what makes them valuable. Now here's the final insight. Survival is not about having the most advanced tools. It's about having the right tools at the right time. Tools that work without systems, solve problems quickly, reduce effort and risk. And most of those tools are simple. Now here's the takeaway. Don't underestimate cheap items. Because when systems fail, simplicity becomes reliability. And reliability is what keeps you functional when everything else becomes uncertain. In the end, it's not about how much something costs. It's about whether it works when you actually need it. And these items do exactly that.